Today on Carolina Week, it's election season, and both the university and the state are making national headlines. We'll tell you about the people and politics to expect on your ballot.
And the midterm is not the only election impacting students. We take a look at the international politics and their effects on students right here on campus.
All this and more next on Carolina Week.
From the UNC Hussman School of Journalism and Media, connecting Carolina's campus and community, this is Carolina Week.
Hello and welcome to Carolina Week. I'm Taylin Kane.
And I'm Lauren Fickton. Taylin, these next few weeks are packed full of North Carolina politics with the midterm election around the corner.
That's right, Lauren, but the midterm election is not the only politics North Carolina is a part of. UNC and Harvard University presented their arguments to the U.S. Supreme Court Monday for each of their affirmative action lawsuits against the group Students for Fair Admissions. Reporter Kyle Ennis breaks down the case.
The University of North Carolina and Harvard are two institutions at the forefront of a policy known as affirmative action. The Students for Fair Admissions, or SFFA, sued the two institutions for using the policy in admissions decisions where race can be one factor considered in an applicant's process. For one student, her background does define her.
When I applied to UNC, I wrote about my race as one of the most important parts of my identity. My entire Common App essay was about how being an Asian American in a predominantly white community shaped my background in activism.
The UNC Affirmative Action Coalition is pushing back on centuries of inequality in American universities, says Zhang.
We need these equitable policies because race and racism is so deeply integrated into our society.
Without the representation afforded by affirmative action, some like Zhang worry that history won't ever be addressed properly.
When we don't have diverse students coming in and calling out these issues and standing up for basic human decency, we're not going to progress as a school and an institution.
SFFA leaders feel that a solution to racial inequality in higher ed lies beyond affirmative action. In a statement, Ed Blum said, "It is a moral failure that our most competitive universities place high schoolers on racial registers and tell the world that their skin color affects what they think and know and what they like and don't like."
No, it has
Students
to
can
be
expect to hear the results of the Supreme Court case in the spring or summer of
No,
2023.
it has to.
But for now, from undergraduate admissions in Chapel Hill, I'm Kyle Ennis,
No, it has
Carolina
to be
Week.
this.
I just think it should be this way.
Election
Okay.
day is less than a week away, and there's a lot to be said about the politics of this year's midterm ballot.
That's right, Lauren, and the North Carolina citizens are making their way to the polls already. One-stop absentee voting is more commonly known as early voting. This allows voters to cast a ballot in person and also choose a day that best suits their schedule. Some important days to look ahead. Today is the 13th day of early voting in North Carolina. Only 3 days left before early voting sites close off this Saturday. If you have not yet registered but still want to vote, these one-stop sites allow you to do both at the same time.
Voters may cast a ballot at any early voting sites in the county where they're registered. There are 6 sites here in Orange County. All locations are open on the same date and hours, including weekends. According to the North Carolina State Board of Election, if you voted in North Carolina before, you do not need to show your voter ID. Sample ballots are available through Voter Search Online. Knowing your candidate choices in advance and being familiar with the ballot will help your voting experience go more quickly.
And Orange County residents can vote right now at any early voting site in the county. CW reporter Kelly Kendall is at one of those polling places right now. Kelly?
That's right, Taylin. Early voting is still happening at polling places like this one at the Chapel of the Cross Episcopal Church on Franklin Street. It's located right next to the Moorhead Planetarium, and it's a spot where Orange County residents can early vote until November 5th. It's been a pretty busy morning here at the church with a steady number of voters trickling in during these last 3 days of early voting. This location will be open through Friday from 8 a.m. until 7:30 p.m. and shorter hours this Saturday from 8 a.m. until 3 p.m. If you choose to vote next Tuesday on Election Day, you'll have to head to your assigned polling place. You can find out where that is on the North Carolina State Board of Elections website. That's ncsbe.gov. Lauren, back to you.
Thanks, Kelly. Over 55,000 North Carolina residents who had felony convictions are eligible to vote this year, according to the North Carolina State Board of Elections. 3 months ago, anyone serving a felony sentence in North Carolina was still ineligible. Earlier this year, a superior court ruled that denying voter rights to people serving felony sentences outside of jail is unconstitutional. The decision has since been appealed and will be heard in the North Carolina Supreme Court in 2023. You must still be at least 18 years old by the next general election, a U.S. citizen, and have lived in North Carolina for at least 30 days before the election. In 2019, over 83% of felony charges in North Carolina were for nonviolent offenses. Taylin, North Carolina Senate campaigns have been especially heated this year.
That's right, and that's because the race to fill outgoing Senator Richard Burr's seat is one of the most closely watched this midterm cycle.
Reporter Pete Viesmil breaks down the latest on this crucial election.
It's a race in a dead heat.
We turn to North Carolina, where a tight race for an open Senate seat has largely stayed under the radar.
And what some are calling a sleeper battleground state.
The North Carolina Senate race is one of 34 this midterm, but with the chamber currently split between Republicans and Democrats, each could be crucial to determining Senate control for the next 2 years. And that's especially true for North Carolina. On the ballot are Democrat Cherry Beasley and Republican Ted Budd. Both candidates have a history of public service in the state and have been campaigning tooth and nail to win this seat.
And we're doing door knocking. I think they just hit 1 million doors.
I am fully committed to running hard to serve the folks here in North Carolina in the United States Senate.
Beasley is a former public defender and the first Black woman to serve as Chief Justice of the NC Supreme Court. The Democrat candidate is running on expanding access to health care, criminal justice reform, and combating the climate crisis. Beasley has also prioritized protecting reproductive rights, especially after the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade earlier this year.
I will fight to make sure that Roe v. Wade becomes the law of the land. It is the right thing to do, and women deserve that kind of freedom and protection.
Budd is currently representing North Carolina's 13th district in the U.S. House. The three-term congressman has criticized the Biden administration's handling of the economy, foreign affairs, and crime. Budd has positioned the race as a referendum on President Biden and his policies.
I heard about crime waves that turned safe neighborhoods into deadly battlefields. My friends, I'm sure all of that chaos is completely unacceptable to you, and I want you to know that it is completely unacceptable to me.
On the campaign trail, Budd has made his disapproval of the White House's response to today's higher inflation and gas prices very clear. He has expressed that a vote for his opponent is a vote for maintaining the status quo. Beasley has been critical of Budd's association with former President Donald Trump, who has endorsed Budd. The Beasley campaign has also highlighted and criticized the congressman's vote to not certify the results of the 2020 elections.
And he refused to vote to certify the 2020 elections and even voted against securing and protecting future elections.
Look, I'm going to make it easy to vote and hard to cheat, Tim. That's my rule.
While Budd maintains an advantage in recent polls, his lead remains within the margin of error in most of them. Even so, both the Cook Political Report, the University of Virginia Center for Politics, and other organizations have designated the race as, quote, lean Republican, end quote. Reporting in Chapel Hill, this is Pete Villasmil, Carolina Week.
These politicians focus their campaigns around several issues that we see on the ballot this midterm, one of these being abortion laws in North Carolina. On one side, U.S. Senate candidate Cherry Beasley was endorsed by the largest reproductive rights advocacy group, Pro-Choice America. Beasley recently told CNN that abortion is a real big issue, and she wants to ensure that Roe v. Wade is the law of the land. There are currently 12 states where abortion is illegal in the country. North Carolina is one state that allows a person to get an abortion up to 20 weeks into their pregnancy. Current House Representative and U.S. Senate candidate Ted Budd has a different position.
I was listening to you.
Budd has openly pushed for a near-total ban to abortion. On his website, he claims that if elected, he will oppose court packing that attempts to expand the Supreme Court as well as defund Planned Parenthood. Even with greater restrictions in place, abortion is still legal in North Carolina up to 20 weeks, and clinics remain open across the state.
Moving along to the lower body of Congress, another key race taking place for North Carolina's 4th Congressional District. The retirement of Congressman David Price opened the door for a new voice in the House of Representatives. Reporter Eric Weir tells us more.
The two nominees bidding to replace David Price are Democrat Valerie Foushee and Republican Courtney Geels. Foushee currently serves on the state Senate and is a former Orange County commissioner. Geels is an ER nurse and a political newcomer. Foushee's platform focuses on criminal justice reform, codifying abortion, and equity in education. Geels is advocating for individual rights, transparency in healthcare, and anti-abortion. Geels decided to run after she noticed an issue between money and the interests of patients.
There's this separation, the people making decisions and the people doing the job.
This pushed her desire to reform the healthcare system. Her first step, she said, would be to force all hospitals to show their pricing publicly. She believes patients will choose the cheaper hospitals, driving down costs altogether. Another issue Geels is adamant about is federal power. Geels doesn't agree with the past two administrations' use of executive orders.
We need to decrease the power of the federal government and really bring power to the states and the people so that the people who are representing the people are closer to them and can really figure out what they need and advocate for those things.
Geels says she believes in the freedom to choose what is best for each individual and seeks to remove the power of the executive order if she wins the election. Across the aisle, Foushee says she is fighting for Americans' right to choose on abortion.
With the recent court decision as it relates to women's reproductive freedom, I think that it is past time that we codify Roe v. Wade so that we're not at this juncture ever again.
Geels is anti-abortion, but thinks it should be up to the states to decide its legality, saying she will never present a bill to the House about it. As a former administrator for the Chapel Hill Police Department, Foushee has campaigned to reform the justice system and address systemic racism. Foushee also says she believes in equity in education.
Education is the great leveler, that when children are given the opportunity and access to quality education, then they can be assured that their futures are going to be bright.
Foushee would push for universal free pre-K and the expansion of programs that keep student debt at a minimum. With the district having a history of electing Democratic candidates, Geels will have an uphill battle, but that is for the voters to decide. From Chapel Hill, I'm Eric Weir, Carolina Week.
The North Carolina State Senate is another race that will be on your ballot. Carolina Week's Stephen Schlenk joins us now to tell us about the candidates. Stephen?
Lauren and Talon, Senate District 23 represents Chapel Hill in the state Senate. Democrat Greg Meyer and Republican Landon Woods are facing off to represent our district. We asked both candidates to speak with us so voters could get to know them. When asked why he's seeking this office, Meyer says,
we have some major issues that we have to take up and settle in North Carolina. What are we going to do about education funding? What are we going to do about marijuana legalization? What are we going to do about climate change? So I want to be able to work on some of those things and figure out what our solutions are going to be.
In an interview with Chapelboro, Woods gave his why.
I just felt like I could do a better job than the status quo. I don't have kids yet, but when I do, I want them to grow up in a prosperous place to where they have every opportunity that I was offered and then be able to utilize it and do something with it.
On abortion, Woods told the News and Observer, quote, there should be a ban on abortion with some exceptions. Abortion on demand is a shameful thing. If the mother's life is in danger, I can see where exceptions should be made, end quote. Meyer, on the other hand, said he is a
firm believer that women should have access to abortion and all forms of reproductive health care. And I do believe that we should maintain legal, available, and safe abortions in North Carolina.
Whether it's at the pump or grocery store, consumers across the country are feeling the hike in cost. Meyer said if elected, his plan is to
try to make sure that people have jobs that pay them well enough to take care of their families and prepare for their retirement. And that means that jobs have to keep up with inflation when inflation goes up.
In contrast, Woods said,
I want to be able to pursue a better economy for North Carolina. We were #1 in business, and I want to get us back to that point. So I would like to see fuel prices come down for our farmers, for truckers, for people that still have to use petroleum products.
As you heard, Meyer spoke with me in an interview while Woods declined the invitation, but referred us to an interview he did with Chapelboro Radio and other previous comments. For now, in Chapel Hill, I'm Stephen Schlink, Carolina Week.
Stick with us for a look at some international elections and their effects on the UNC students after this.
Baby, you see, you're so right for me, and I am right for you. I love the things you do, like sweet tasting wine. Your lips are so divine. Your loving turns me on. My lonely days are gone. That's why I'm never gonna let you go. Never gonna let you go. Babe, I'm never gonna let you go. No, no, never gonna let you go. Baby, never gonna let you go. Never gonna let you go.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Never gonna let you go.
UNC housekeepers are demanding higher wages and free parking on campus. Carolina Week reporter Kelly Kendall has the story.
Overworked and underpaid. UNC housekeepers say that's the feeling that drove them to tell the university,
"We're sick and tired of being sick and tired."
On Friday, the workers' union at UNC, a chapter of the UE Local 150 organization, held a rally and march demanding that housekeepers receive $20 per hour wages and free parking on campus. Tracy Harder has been a housekeeper at UNC for 16 years. She said she and her colleagues have been working more in the face of staffing shortages, but aren't making livable wages.
You can't keep paying us what you paid us when things were pre-COVID. If you want quality work, we want quality pay. And we want free parking because you hand us $15 an hour on one hand, and with the other hand, you're taking it away.
During the march, the workers' union handed over a petition with over 2,000 signatures, including 200 housekeepers. It asked for Chancellor Kevin Guskowitz to advocate for housekeepers' demands and for housekeepers to have a seat at the table with university administration.
They are the ones that make this university run. They are essential workers, and it's time that they start being treated like essential workers.
The university said in a statement, quote, "The chancellor is committed to addressing this issue, and his office, human resources, and the UNC system continue to advocate for changes that would allow the university the authority to further address the housekeepers' concerns," end quote. The chancellor was not present at Friday's rally. In Chapel Hill, Kelly Kendall, Carolina Week.
For American students studying abroad, fulfilling their civic duty to vote doesn't end when they leave the United States.
But the process does look a bit different. International CW reporter Kasia Sari has the story.
A lot changes for a student when they decide to study abroad, but the right to vote remains the same. Founder and president of the U.S. Vote Foundation, Susan Jadushitska-Swina, says this is critical for those eligible to vote to recognize.
Americans don't realize that when they leave the borders of the U.S., they carry their right to vote in their pocket.
The foundation sends voting information to university study abroad offices. UNC Study Abroad Communications Manager Mallory Minahan sends that information to Tar Heels overseas.
We just want to make sure they have the resources they need, and we hope that they will cast their voice and have their voice heard.
4,000 miles away from his Raleigh home, Junior Russell Harrington says recent social issues pushed him to vote while in Spain.
I think it was important, especially around like a lot of the issues that have arisen about like abortion and especially in the past couple of months, as well as like police violence and like how we want to see those resources distributed.
Harrington registered as an overseas voter through Wake County's Board of Elections online. All he had to do was request an absentee ballot, which caught him by surprise.
I thought I would have to get a ballot sent to me by mail and then send it back, which was going to be not exactly what I wanted to do. And then I've learned that I could also complete my ballot online.
He says it made the whole process much quicker than going directly to the polls.
By the time that I had to actually fill out the online ballot, I could just go through and like click everyone, and it was easy submission.
For our Tar Heel in Spain, there's no excuse to not vote.
Studying abroad is only a temporary thing, and like it's kind of a poor excuse to not participate.
And U.S. Vote Foundation's Jeduszycka Swina hopes that once students vote overseas, they come back with a greater sense of democracy.
Once you get them going, and voting from overseas is a great experience, you're going to be creating responsible, engaged citizens from then on.
In Pamplona, Spain, I'm Kasia Sari, Carolina Week.
And beyond the midterms, elections across the world affect UNC students right here on campus.
That's right, Talon. A close and highly consequential election for the Brazilian presidency was decided over the weekend. Left-wing leader Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva won by a small margin against incumbent President Jair Bolsonaro. The election was highly controversial even internationally, as both candidates have received wide criticism. Bolsonaro downplayed the COVID-19 pandemic, and poverty in Brazil skyrocketed during his presidency. Lula faced corruption charges in 2017, and now he takes his third term in office after serving over a year and a half in jail.
And the 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China wrapped up last week. Reporter Charlotte Zhao tells us more.
After many speculations, the party's Politburo Standing Committee granted current Chinese President Xi Jinping an unprecedented third term, breaking with tradition by not stepping down after a decade in power.
The 20th National Congress of the Communist Party of China is a meeting of great importance. It takes place at a critical time as the entire party and the Chinese people of all ethnic groups embark on a new journey to build China into a modern socialist country in all respects and advance towards the second centenarial goal.
There's little to no Chinese media coverage of this constitutional change that could allow Xi to remain in power for life. Experts have criticized the closed-door nature of the election and how it affects Chinese citizens. Nearly 600,000 WeChat accounts were allegedly blocked in an effort to scrub the unusual succession from public conversation. One student at UNC asked to be interviewed anonymously, fearing retaliation.
Not everyone came from a place of democracy and free speech. So a lot of time when you are reprimanding the people who are not standing up for themselves enough, just keep in mind of their background and be aware of the fact that you are currently in an ivory tower.
These elections happens only every 5 years and gets lots of attention not only in China, but also echoes internationally. Chinese students on more than 100 college campuses around the globe joined forces to protest through posters and handwritten notes. Protesters like this other UNC student say they will continue to protest and raise awareness in ways that could reverberate back home.
I believe the louder that you speak up for yourself, the more power you can gain for yourself.
In Chapel Hill, I'm Charlotte Zhao, Carolina Week.
We've talked about the international, domestic, and statewide political climate. Now let's talk about the actual climate.
Carolina Week meteorologist Brian Foster gives us a look at the weather forecast for the week ahead.
Well, speaking of climate, it's going to be really warm this week, cool to start, and I'll show that in the 5-day. However, I want to bring your attention to this photo I'd taken yesterday. This is a hike I went on at Jordan Lake in Raleigh. Look at these beautiful colors in the trees and how they're reflecting off the water. Great weather it was to be outside yesterday. And more of these similar conditions as well throughout the rest of this week. Great time to be outdoors. Great time to go out and go vote. Your voice matters. Have great weather for that. Looking at our temperature forecast for November, we just began the month. According to the National Weather Service, we have equal chances of seeing above or below normal temperatures. Just basically goes to show that we're around normal this time of year. So great time to be outdoors. However, for the rest of this week, I'm a little cool to start. And I'll show this in our map from the weather across the entire nation. Right now, we're under the influence of some cool air. because of the rain that moved in on Halloween. So as we've got some cool air coming in from Canada, filtering into the area, keeping us a little cool for tonight. Looking for your forecast for tomorrow. Similar conditions what we had this time last week. The cool air will be moving off the East Coast, still kind of under the influence for that for your Thursday afternoon. However, warm air is right on its heels. It's going to make its way towards Chapel Hill later this week, especially by this weekend. But for your forecast for tomorrow, if you're waking up early for your classes, maybe you want to go out for a jog. We're not around that time of year, might need a jacket for the morning hours, but by the afternoon, you'll need to shed that jacket. We'll be close to 70 degrees. Clouds might start filtering into the area as we have today, but there will be much less in nature for tomorrow afternoon. And no rain tomorrow as well. Looking at our drought monitor, this doesn't reflect the rain we had saw on Halloween, so some of this has improved, but I think this is going to start worsening once again as we look at our rainfall forecast as well. This is look for Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, all weekend. There's a stripe of no rain extending from Florida all the way up the East Coast to Maine. So make sure you're watering your plants if you have any plants outdoors. But this is also another sign to be outdoors. Look at the beautiful colors in the leaves as well. And also make sure to take time to go vote if you haven't done so already. Looking at our 5-day forecast, a little cool to start. As I said, temperatures will be around 70 degrees. Mostly cloudy today. Maybe some breaks in the sun later on this afternoon. Same weather for Thursday as well. Temperatures will be close around 71 degrees, a couple of clouds in the area, but our biggest change comes later this week. Friday, 73 degrees. I'm confident we might actually see 80 degrees on Saturday, so a great time to be outdoors. Summer temperatures for Sunday as well. So guys, hope you have a great week ahead. The weather's going to be great for you to be outdoors as well, and enjoy the weather.
Thanks, Brian. Looks like we have a warm weekend ahead.
Yep, and we'll take a look at some of the exciting Carolina athletics going on this weekend after this.
I'm Chris Jakovic. I served in the United States Air Force and I deployed 3 times. So in 2017, I was serving as an Air Force First Sergeant. Our motto in that role is my job is people, everyone is my business. But unfortunately in that year, I would lose my own brother, Lance Corporal Adam Jakovic, to suicide. The majority of veteran suicides are from guns. I store my weapons securely, not only for myself, but for my family. My service never stops.
STEM is everywhere, like here, behind the scenes of The Walking Dead.
When we break down clothes, we tumble it with trisodium phosphate, rock salt, and dish detergent.
We stitched together images of our model and created a 3D set that could be walked through in a VR headset.
We're able to turn 12 walkers into 1,000 walker boards.
STEM can create new worlds on and off the screen. What will you make with STEM? Get inspired at shecanstem.com.
While some students will have their eyes glued to the election polls, others will have their eyes glued to the UNC-UVA game this weekend.
Let's turn to Sports Extra anchor Olivia Mundorf to hear what's going on in Carolina athletics.
Thanks, Taylin. UNC fall teams are heading into postseason play this weekend, and the football team is at the top of the Coastal Division. And how about Drake May? He adds another impressive accolade to his credentials. He's the Davey O'Brien QB of the week. All eyes are on May yet again after an all-around performance that moved the team to 7-1. Drake hit the end zone 5 times in the air, throwing for 400 yards and rushed more than 60 against Pitt. The Heels travel to Virginia for a noon conference showdown against the Cavaliers on Saturday. But May wasn't the only offensive treasure in the 42-24 victory against Pitt. Wide receiver Antoine Green received an ACC Player of the Week honor after a career-high 10 catches and 180 receiving yards. He also recorded his 3rd multi-touchdown game in his college career. With a colossal 564 yards, Green now leads UNC in receiving yards and ranks 2nd on the team behind Josh Downs with 6 receiving touchdowns. Green is proving himself as one of the best receivers in college football. At the beginning of the season, Carolina football fans looked to newly hired defensive coordinator Gene Chizik to make big improvements on that side of the ball. But many didn't expect a first-year starter to bring players together. BJ Tillman has the story.
It's clear that sophomore linebacker Power Eccles is a vocal leader for the UNC defense. Eccles said the transition was somewhat natural.
I mean, since my whole life, I've kind of always been a leader in any team I've been a part of, even if it's, like club basketball. Like I've always been vocal in that sense.
But Eccles said that rallying his team together doesn't just mean being the most vocal. It also means leading by example.
If I got to talk some more here, let's talk some more here. If I have to not say much, but just make plays and do my job, is doing my job. But other than that, it's just going out there trying to do anything to help my team win, do my job, do my winning.
And Eccles' example has gone a long way for the Heels. Coach Mac Brown said the massive improvements the Heels defense has seen in recent games can be largely attributed to the standard of excellence Eccles has set.
He practices like he plays. He loves to play the game of football. And that's carrying over to some other members of our defense.
And Eccles' passion is contagious beyond the stadium lights.
He is upbeat every day. So if I'm feeling bad, I go find Power to pick me up. And that's just the attitude he has.
Even with the successful season he's led for Carolina football, Eccles stays humble. He said everything he does is for the good of the team.
I feel like it's just doing what I need to do for my team. Anything I can do to help my team win is what I'm going to do.
With Carolina defense continuing to improve in the past few games, Eccles hopes to continue to lead the Heels to a division title. This is Barbara Joy Tillman reporting.
As the #1 team in the country and the #1 seed in the conference tournament, the UNC field hockey team opens ACC play later this afternoon. The Heels finished the regular season with an undefeated record and will enter the tournament following 2 straight shutout victories, including last weekend's win at Duke. With a win later today, the Heels will not only continue their perfect season, but will have a chance to bring another ACC championship back to Chapel Hill with a win on Friday. Game time today is set for 1 p.m. The ACC tournament begins for the #1 seeded UNC women's soccer team tomorrow. The Tar Heels are looking to claim their 23rd ACC title. The first opponent they face will be the Duke Blue Devils. The two teams met in September and the Heels came away with a 3-0 victory. The game will start at 5:30 at Wake Med. The men's soccer team is ready to kick off the postseason. Boston College will come to Dorrance Field tonight for the first round of the ACC tournament. The Tar Heels finished the season with 7 wins, 4 losses, and 5 ties. In their most recent meeting with the Eagles, the Tar Heels came out with a draw. The pressure to score will rest on 5th-year senior midfielder Milo Garvanian and junior forward Akeem Clark. Kickoff is at 6 p.m. Both the men's and women's tennis teams are starting play in the ITA Nationals, and the Heels have multiple teams vying for the ACC championship starting today and tomorrow. Sports Extra will be back on Friday to recap the tournament semifinal matches and preview another exciting week in Carolina athletics.
We're all just trying to keep things running for those who rely on us. That's why we don't have time to be sick with the flu.
We don't have time for delays.
We don't have time for spills.
Next.
We don't have time for setbacks. Let's be real.
Getting the flu shot
helps you fight the flu.
Get a flu shot for yourself and those around you too.
This year, celebrate Vote Early Day
and make your voice heard.
Each year, the amount of people voting early grows.
And this fall, over 220 million Americans can vote early.
In person.
By dropping off their ballot.
Or mailing it in. With so many options, you can vote when it's convenient for you.
Election Day is the last day to cast your ballot.
So the question isn't why vote early.
It's why wait. Join the celebration and find out how you can vote early at voteearlyday.org.
Well-being days have been a mixed bag for UNC students, and it poses a question of how effective they really are. Joshua Dolgoff has more on the story.
Of course, every student enjoys a day off.
It kind of gives me a time to really reflect on how I'm doing, mentally.
But an argument can be made that UNC's well-being days are not serving their true purpose. The university implemented 2 well-being days this past September to improve mental health on campus. Ryan Wishart, a psychotherapist in Charlotte, fully supports the policy.
The hope would be a break from that, a 24-hour break from that, could just give the student a chance to decompress, to let some air out of their balloon, metaphorically.
Most students like Brown do take the day for themselves to stay active and relax outside.
Love reading self-help books too. I've been really getting into those Also love listening to podcasts too.
However, some students like junior Ethan Rayala have not been given that break due to the continuous academic pressure from classes.
There's been days that it really has stressed me out because I've had a test the next day or something, and that well-being day, I'll just be cramming the whole day for that test.
This is a concern for Wishart as he recognizes how susceptible college students are to burnout and mental health struggles.
There's probably social consequences, family consequences, focus, motivation, like energy. I'm not sure you can be a productive college student with those symptoms.
But Rayala sees a solution to reduce academic stress on these days.
I think they could be improved if we kind of treat them like holidays. So it's really in addition to our weekend. And then our first day back is when we can have stuff due.
It's a step in the right direction, but the well-being days are still a work in progress. In Chapel Hill, I'm Joshua Dolgoff.
And whether the mental health days are truly helpful or not, some UNC students are calling for another day off, Election Day. NC Young People's Alliance works to encourage young voters to get out the vote. They believe that making Election Day a university holiday would give students more time to vote and even engage in canvassing registrations or campaigning for candidates without missing class. Here's what some Tar Heels think.
Each person votes, and it's also hard, like with classes, to be able to have time to vote. And so I think it's really important that students are given that opportunity to vote if they want to.
I really do want to vote, but I just don't have time to go do it.
Yeah, I think making Election Day a holiday would be really beneficial. I know it's hard for students to get out and vote with classes and assignments due that day. So if the goal is to increase voter participation, then making it a holiday would go a long way in doing that.
Carolina Week reached out to UNC Media Relations for comment. We are still waiting for a response.
Taylin, I know you're from North Carolina. This is a big election. Are you looking forward to voting?
I am looking forward to voting. I am also looking forward to the UNC UVA football game. Are you going to be tuning in?
Oh, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, that does it for this week of Carolina Week. We'll see you next time.